KCJJ. Current temperature 13.
KCJJ weather. Brought to you by Plum Supply.
Plum Supply kitchens and baths. Your home never looks so beautiful.
3 after 8 o'clock, the mighty 1630. KCJJ, Captain Steve, Jim Hunter.
We're joined by Brad Harvey. Brad,
Haven't thought of Brad in about 40 years.
Well, it's probably a little less than that, but
it's dog years.
Brad, we met Brad as a publisher of a music magazine, or kind of a culture magazine for the Quad Cities called Oil. And over the years, Brad has moved on to different things and has written a couple of books, and he's got a new one out now, right?
Right. It's called I Know Why the Caged Brad Sings.
And Brad is a musician.
Yeah, he's been in bands and entertained and for a long time.
Yeah, I've got a lot of tree rings on me.
Yeah.
You remember Paula Sands, who just retired from
Yes.
doing he had a segment, weekly segment on Paula Sands too, where he'd introduce bands and they'd perform and stuff.
Yeah, that was called the Oil Spotlight.
Yeah.
Basically, I think they changed the term every week. But I guess going back to that, we were just talking about how we had a lot of live music acts, and I kind of over the years, I watch a lot of YouTube. I live down in Tennessee, I should add now, and we occasionally tune in to see what they're doing up in our old hometown.
Sure.
I'm a little distressed that for a lot of the Paula's anniversary shows, there's no mention of any of the music that was featured on
And there was a lot over the years.
Yeah, and I think part of that was that when Paula was on, the format at the time, they saved everything on those old cartridges.
Yeah.
And I was told that they just didn't have the space to store cartridge after cartridge, and
Well, she was on 5 days a week.
Right, and they wiped all of those appearances.
Oh my God!
However, you can view Richard Simmons in perpetuity on YouTube twerking with some very obese Paula fans. So
I remember that.
They did manage to preserve a few things. But
well, Steve and I went on.
Yeah. A few times
with our moose mascot, and and that was a bit of a debacle, but it was all right.
Yeah, no, we would. I've got those cartridges of our appearance. I think we made like 3 or 4 appearances, but you have to find somebody that still has that equipment. It's like I've got these reels of Remember the Mississippi Jams.
Yeah,
we broadcast all of those. I've got these gigantic reels, and what do you notice here? We don't have any reels.
Well, it's that kind of stuff that I've always argued with people that one of the way I wrote my book is that at one point we thought we were going to move back from Tennessee. Mm-hmm. I quit my job. People call it retirement, but it's just getting so fed up you don't care anymore.
And tell people what you were doing, because it's really way different than being a musician.
I was driving a truck.
Yeah, and not just a parts truck. You were driving 18-wheelers, right?
Yeah, I did that for about 3 years. I worked for Schneider National, went all over, and then I ended up moving to Tennessee. I took a job down there where I still drove trucks, and the last 14 years I delivered home dialysis product, to homes and businesses. So I was used to going up into mountains and down hollers and a big tandem axle.
Wow.
And that kind of thing. So, but we'd gotten to the point where we really thought that, well, we're not going to be able to afford to live down here in Tennessee, so let's move back to the Quad Cities. And because the houses are cheap.
Yeah.
They're also crumbling, but they're still cheap. So I wrote this book as kind of a resume. I mean, I'm really into history. I'm really into promoting people. I don't like to see what people have done just vanish into obscurity. And that's the how and why I wrote that book. But I thought if I'm going to live up in the Quad Cities, I'm going to give myself a job. And so what I was proposing was, let's open a music museum.
Oh, okay.
And let's really make it state of the art with, like, you go down to Memphis or Nashville, you can walk in, they have touch screens. You know, you can see Webb Pierce's Cadillac parked in the middle of the floor.
That's pretty cool.
That kind of stuff. But I wanted to put something together like that. And that's why I wrote the book the way I wrote it. It was like, I'm going to go to the city planners, whatever.
Sure.
And when I go, hey, let's do a museum, and you let me run it. And when they go, who the hell are you? I could pull this book out and say, this is the hell who I am. And so forth. But I don't know. I've been up here. My father died when I came up here a few days or about a month after I'd been up here. And I don't know. I've spent a lot more time up here, and I'm kind of sort of realizing all the reasons why I left.
Well,
to begin with.
It's hard to. I can't remember who it was. It's hard to ever come back. It's hard to come back home again.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that famous "You can't go home again."
You can't go home again.
Well, why are you negative about?
It just seems like for example, they did a mural in downtown Moline. They managed to get like $30,000, I think, a combination of grants and donations and stuff. And they painted this mural on the side of a building. It's right by what used to be the old Greyhound bus depot in downtown Moline. And not only did they not hire any locals to do this, they hired a couple of out-of-towners to paint this mural. I think it's bad art myself, personally. I mean, I think it looks like Mickey Mouse's first acid trip. That's my opinion. But they could easily have approached locals to do this. They're not. The negativity I have is that they're not embracing their own roots, their own history here, and they should be honoring that. But they just, it's like people have a memory that goes back 5 minutes or something.
Well, I know in Bettendorf, and I don't know if it's still there, for years they had a mural on a retaining wall that kind of step-by-step told the history of Bettendorf from the guy that the city's named after to today, and it was done by kids, school kids. And, the art wasn't, state-of-the-art art, but it was still a cool local landmark because it was done locally.
The only thing a town has to differentiate itself from millions of other towns is its own history. And I think the Quad Cities, as you really delve into it, is just, they've got some really amazing
well, I mean,
history.
On the Mississippi, the riverboat gamblers and the music history, guys like Louis Armstrong used to play here. Of course, Bix Beiderbecke, the jazz trumpeter, and it's been a hotbed of musical talent for a long time. There was a bit of a dip shortly after you left, actually, in the 90s, but it's starting to make a comeback now, and unfortunately the live music scene isn't what it used to be, but it's still doing okay.
I think there's also a lot of factors that are maybe even beyond. Like, you've got the Illinois, you've got the tax, the property tax, and I think Illinois is number 2. We're right behind New Jersey in terms of the property tax. And all I've ever heard for years is about how unfriendly the tax situation is to local business.
You
in
hear
Illinois.
that, though, I don't know, you hear that everywhere. I don't know that it's just engaged in Illinois.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons I like it here more than I liked it in the Quad Cities, and I like the Quad Cities. I did. I grew up there, but
I did too.
This place, Iowa City and Cedar Rapids, we embrace, I think, the history more.
Yeah.
We're more aware of it, being it's a university community. We're more vocal about it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I write quite a bit about KFMH in my book.
And why is that?
Yeah, why the hell is that?
Because you're entertaining.
Well, and if anybody who remembers the old KFMH, and we still do it, we played local bands.
Right.
And we actually had them come in and play on the air sometimes.
Well, my thing was like beyond. I mean, certainly that's a good thing. Playing local music. But your morning show, it was you and Steve and Dirty Judy. You never knew what was going to happen from day to day on that show. And there were times where I used to listen, and I'm thinking, wow, I can't believe he just said that.
I sometimes we still experience that, and sometimes it's wow, I can't believe the caller just said that. But yeah,
no, when it went down, I was ready. We thought we were going to go over to 1270 a.m. and I was ready to start something new. I've been there 21 years. And I really wanted to do what I am doing. Strangely enough, to me, I embrace the personality of KFMH and try to dictate that. The music never really was the thing to me. It's never been the thing to me in radio. It's always been radio and what it does beside that. And so I was ready to go, and I was kind of made the villain when the company that owned Mercury, that owned WHBF 1270, they said, well, if we're going to do this, you've got to go with it. And I said, I'm buying this real pit in Iowa City, which it was at the time. And so it ended, and then my partner and manager here, Tom, in 2013, just came back from a meeting, and they were, we miss KFMH, and we heard that. I heard that for 19 freaking years.
never went away. Never really went away.
Yeah, they kept saying that, and so, and now with the new technology, he said, well, let's put it back on the internet, and I said, it's gonna cost. I said, because we got to get the apparatus, pay the royalties, pay the distributor, and he said, well, we'll do a radiothon on KCJJ. So he said, what do you think we could do? I said, well, according to our engineer and everything, we need about 21 grand. And he said, well, what do you think we'll do? And I said, maybe 600. We did like 25.
It was a pretty amazing
in the
weekend.
Fundraiser.
Yeah,
and it's been going since. We did an initial show here on March the 1st of '94. 2013, excuse me.
Yeah.
March the 1st of 2013, and then it went on the air solid on March 14th of 2013. It's been going ever since. We've got, unlike most internet stations, it really does have a big audience. Got like I pay for bandwidth, so they tell me what I've got. I've got 19 to 20 to 23,000 average weekly. So, it does pretty well. It's running out of my basement because I've got fast internet, which we did not have here until a few weeks ago.
Wow.
And all the jocks. I mean, we've got Mary back, Mary of the Heartland. We got Roberto. We've got Mr. Hunter, Tom Mankey.
and some newcomers, but
Bill Clutho, who was a Quad City.
Yeah.
He's in Chattanooga now, I think.
Yep.
And Tommy Lang, who's been in Eastern Iowa for 30-some years on the air. So, and Patrick O'Leary.
Yeah, who's
Based in
Well,
St.
kind of a
Louis.
neophyte, but really schooled musically. He does a great jam show on Sunday afternoons.
So it's been going. It's rewarding and everything to have it back.
I got a comment. I really like your studio here. It's just, I remember the farmhouse, and I remember the one on Locust Street, and this is the first time I've ever been here, and it's cozy.
Yeah, we like it.
You know, it's a little
Desolate.
It's a little disconcerting driving out here on these roads, but I told Roberto, is that Buddy Holly's body out there?
You know, that cornfield or soybean field, depending on the year, it looks exactly like it could be. But yeah, so before you wrote this book, you wrote a family history book.
Yeah, my mother published her first book at age 90.
And that's so, you guys wrote it together, but I mean, basically, she told you the family history, or how did that work?
God, you got a lot of pages in this book.
Yeah, I wrote. I'll veer back to your first question there, but yeah, the book. I just tried to cram as much as I could in there because I kind of wrote it with the attitude: what if this is the last thing I ever do? All my friends around me are dropping like flies, you know, and stuff. But my mother, she'd always written. I mean, whether it was in journals, she was an inveterate letter writer. Just wrote everybody. And anyway, at one point, we decided that why don't you tell your story, and other people, it'll be universal because you grew up during the Great Depression.
Sure.
And you can relay all those stories, plus your family will have a record of how you got here. And I was living in Tennessee, and she would handwrite chapters, and then I would get them, type them all up, and then, you know, did my little editorial thing and find out, well, what did you mean here? And you need to clarify. And then I hired Linda Cook, I don't believe she ever edited a book, but she didn't charge an awful lot to do it. So.
And she was the entertainment writer for the Quad City Times.
Right, and she's been a movie critic.
Movie critic, yeah.
And she's been on a lot of Quad Cities TV.
Yeah.
In that capacity.
You remember crap I don't remember.
Well, you know, it's so funny that...
Last man standing over here.
Yeah. It's so funny because even when I was the first incarnation, people would come up to me afterwards and say, you know, that one time you did this. And it's funny because we're doing live shows 5 days a week. You don't know what sticks, right? And like, I'll never forget this guy comes up to me at a bar in the East Village of Davenport. I was disc jockeying. It was probably 10 years after, or 8 to 10 years after KFMH had signed off, and he said, I never laughed so hard when Steve made you pronounce the names of the Russian basketball players during an exhibition the Hawkeyes played, and then you mispronounced A.C. Earl's name on purpose and called him Assy. He said, that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard, and I'm like, I don't even remember that.
Steve Bridges, who used the airwaves with great hilarity to pummel the shortcomings of his competitors.
That's great. That line that should be on your tombstone.
To pummel?
Yes. That's great.
Wow.
Yeah, we were talking about some of the there's a legend that's actually grown around Steve Bridges.
Yeah. Steve Bridges did you hear that Steve Bridges died?
Yeah.
Did you hear that one where Ross Hacker at one of the blues fests, the comedian that used to impersonate George Bush, died. His name was Steve Bridges. Yeah. Well, he gets up at the blues fest and goes, you know, it does a tribute to me. Because I died, and I'm getting like calls. I'm getting calls.
Yes. All right.
Here,
now, okay. Wait a second. So they hear you're dead, and they call you.
Yeah. Well, because people knew I wasn't dead.
Oh, okay. They weren't crying. Oh, I'm so sad you're gone.
I can just hear that in the Ross Hacker voice.
Oh yeah.
Steve Bridges.
He's he's always at the Blues Fest in that front row. Doesn't stay very long because I don't know why, but he's always there.
Well, one of the things that I remember that period, I remember the day that you went off the air, and I was in the oil office, and again, this falls under the category of I can't believe he's still on the air doing that. And I remember it was like it was great for me listening because you were venting your frustration on the air, and you weren't censoring yourself.
I have a hard time with that.
You wouldn't be here today in this field out in Iowa if you didn't have that attitude.
Top of the world, Ma.
But, and I remember that there was something happened where the new owners came in.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this is going to be, I really thought this is a moment in history and I got to capture this. So I slammed a cassette into the boombox and I recorded it, and I put that in the book, when you signed off. And it really, you read that. I remember my mom, who had nothing to do with a radio station or listening or anything like that, looking at that passage, and as it originally ran in oil, and just she got all choked up, because there was this, it was the final. It just felt like, well, everybody is starting to go down in defeat.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like to me.
Well, you've had some fun in your career. Now you said you were in the oil office. Was this the one in the old church?
Yeah, the former Wesley Methodist Church, just down from Yankee Doodle Pizza in Moline.
Yeah. After KFMH went down, did I start writing reviews while I was with KFMH or shortly after? I can't remember which.
You started with KFMH, and then when KFMH went out of business, you probably don't mind me saying this, but
no.
You just said, hey, Brad, can I continue to do my column because it'll help me land another job, maybe?
Yeah.
And I said, sure, no problem. Plus, it was a good column.
Well, thank you. I did music reviews and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
so I go up and Brad would have like a stack of CDs. He says, "Here, you listen to these. Tell me what you think."
Yeah.
And I go to that church. It was very Alice's restaurant-y kind of a vibe coming out of there.
Yeah, my family really helped me make it livable because we only paid $4,000 for that property.
No kidding. Wow.
But it had been stripped at an auction.
Uh-huh.
They tore out pews and steps and down to the subfloor, and they left the toilets.
Well, that was nice of them.
So they had their priorities straight. But and my dad actually helped do a lot of the work to make it. We made it livable the first year. We about froze to death that first year in it. But it eventually, I sold it off to a couple that have done way more with it than we were ever capable of.
And you had just had a child.
Yeah.
And is that Abigail?
Josie Abigail. It's my youngest daughter, and she's been performing around the Quad Cities.
She's your youngest?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, because I just assume I keep forgetting how old we are.
Yeah. Well, just turned 65.
Yeah. Wow. So, his daughter is just an outstanding talent.
Thanks.
I got a chance to see her at Einstein Sisters show.
Yeah.
At the Redstone Room a couple of months ago, and she's going to go places. I think it's not the greatest business right now.
Yeah.
But she's got something.
I think that my oldest daughter, Nikki, she lives out in L.A., and she's been in social media for about the last 15 years.
Yeah.
At one point, she was going to be appointed to head up the Beatles' social media.
No kidding.
Oh,
wow.
cool.
That lasted about 2 weeks. I mean,
but
they
still.
actually announced it within her company.
But still.
And then everything broke down, and she didn't get that gig. But,
Uh-huh.
She's worked with people like Reese Witherspoon and
Oh, nice.
people like, currently she's the social media for, this is embarrassing, the club. It's a chain of comedy clubs. It's where Michael Richards had his meltdown. And
Oh, okay.
it ruined his career and his life.
Yeah.
Well, he's got a lot of money.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
got more time to count it now. But he's
Yeah, he had plenty of that money.
yeah, exactly. But anyway,
I wanted to finish. We start off with my
sure.
mom's book.
Yeah.
I'll just wrap it around to that. Anyway, so we started just putting the stories together, and we hired a graphic artist to help put the book together, and we went through photographs and picked them out, and brought the book out. And she spent the last year of her life promoting it. She died at 91 after publishing at 90. And you can actually go on a Facebook page that we've set up, and you can see some of the news stories where they sent a camera person and a reporter there and taped her. And
what is the name of that book?
the book is called A Dollar More.
That's right. I couldn't remember. I apologize for that. But and is that available on Amazon? I would imagine, or
Yeah,
some of the other platforms?
everything in the world is available on Amazon.
Yeah, that's true.
It
And
really
then
is.
I know where the cage. I know why the cage Brad sings is also on Amazon, and some of the local bookstores in the Quad Cities. I know for sure.
Yeah, basically you can get it at the Co-op in Moline and Ragged Records in Davenport.
Yeah.
Those are the two outlets. It's the sales. I mean, these types of books. I mean, I'm known within a certain county,
Right.
but I'm not a worldwide concern. And
Well, your writing is of that talent level that if somebody got a hold of it and did the right thing with it, you could be. I'm always amazed when people like you and Chris Beiderbecke is another one that comes to mind. When you guys post on Facebook, I go, I gotta cut out some time for this because I know it's going to be long, but I know it's going to be great. Because not blowing smoke up your butt or anything, but I consider you a really good writer
The book is very interesting. It'll be interesting, if you're in the music scene throughout Eastern Iowa and Western Illinois. It really is. For some reason, we have listeners in the Quad Cities on this station.
they still remember.
Honest to God, I don't know. Yeah, I've had people call me that have said, "Hey, I've been." Well, the first call I got here was a woman that called me and said, "My grandmother used to listen to you when I was at KSTT." So, we've have a lot of listeners in the Quad City area.
And it's kind of a universal story. I mean, anybody that's involved in the music scene or radio or growing up in that time, it's a nice little slice of life from that era and so forth. And
I wanted some of those people not to be forgotten.
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of this. There could be many volumes after this book. I just kind of said, "Hey, look at this.
right.
These are the people that I'm familiar with."
Yeah, you could write a multi-volume book about the local bands. Just the people who played Gabe's up here in Iowa City.
Oh, yeah.
Not just local folks, but guys getting started like Nirvana played there once, and some other great bands, of course, have gone through there. Gabe's that would be a great book, just like a book about the Rock Island Brewing Company, who's hosted countless artists over the years. So.
Yeah, I write about the first time I actually met Terry Telka. I write about how he unnerved me because he had like this laser gaze and this really direct manner.
He sure has. That has never gone away.
KFMH went off the air in March of 1994, one of the last independent commercial radio stations in the country. Self-proclaimed Pirate FM had long thumbed its nose at the canned, consultant-driven formats of its competition. The only thing predictable about KFMH's programming was its unpredictability. Station couldn't be muzzled, and listeners loved it for that.
And I went on after my next radio gig was in corporate radio, and I was part of a radio group, and I watched cuts and programming being foisted on us and everything. And the reason I left is because of a budget cut. It wasn't anything I did or didn't do. The ratings were still good and everything. It's just they was being taken over by bean counters and not music people.
And people not from here.
Mm-hmm. I liked, okay, so John Hyatt was in town.
Yes.
And we had pulled the plug. The last song was actually the first song we signed the internet station on with. I've Seen All Good People. And it was said by Jim Hunter, actually, when one door closes, another one opens. And the reason I remember that so clearly is because he went to open the door and it was windy and it shut in his face.
Yeah, you think that's funny.
I thought that was...
Well, if you'd have been at that John Hyatt concert at the Call
wake.
Ballroom, it was an Irish wake. I didn't buy a drink the whole night, and I wobbled home. It was a fun night. It was a crappy night. It was poetic justice. We get to we all meet at a bar in downtown Davenport, and we're what do we do? Well, at least go to the show. So we go in mass to the show. We go to the box office, say we're on the guest list, and they say, well, there's no guest list. Because the record company apparently got word, and so. But the sheriff that was down there all the time, the sheriff's deputy that ran security down there most of the time, he was off duty, but he was always seemed to be at the KFMH shows. He told the guy at the box office, they just lost their jobs. Let them in. So we all got in.
Well, you don't really realize that what you've done, I mean, everybody has their own little personal best. You go on the air, you want to be good.
Sure.
But you don't really realize the impact you have until even years later people come up to you at random and just go, hey, I really wish your station was back or whatever. I get a little bit of that with oil every once in a while.
I'll bet. Well, there's a guy that another radio guy who's now gone on to do a lot of other stuff. He told me that the reason he got into radio is because one night at Ribco, when I was setting up for a remote, he was still in high school, and he asked me a bunch of questions, and I took the time to answer them.
Yeah.
And he goes, everybody else just brushed me off, but I said, well, you're a nice guy. Why would I brush you off? So he said, that's the reason I got into radio, and I didn't hear that until I worked with him for like 3 years, and he said, do you know? And I'm like, wow. So you're right. You just never know.
Yeah, but I brought the book out. Like I said, this is not the type of book that you put out to hit the bestsellers list. I expect it'll just be a little cult item that has a life of its own throughout the years. It's been reviewed in Shindig magazine in England, and there's a magazine called Ugly Things that just gave a really good review. The people that run that, they're actually made up of a staff of people that write a lot of liner notes for box sets and things like that. So they're the real fanatics.
Oh, cool.
And they really liked the book, gave us a good review.
Well, that's good. I mean, it'd be interesting to me to find out what I did.
Yeah, and for those of you in the Quad Cities listening, or if you want to take a road trip to the Quad Cities, and I highly recommend a trip to Co-op Records in Moline. It's still a going concern, and I would say it's a step back in time, but that's really discounting it a little bit. I mean, it's still a thriving record store, but it's a record store like you remember record stores used to be.
They're still at the wall with their guns.
Yeah.
Fighting off the hordes.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're interested in just local music and local musicians, it would be a book to get.
Yeah, and like
just
Brad
skimming
said,
it, and it's just
it's on
not
Amazon.
remembering bands that I haven't thought of in freaking years.
Yeah, it's on Amazon too. But
we my last little plug. We have a YouTube site called Billion Brads, which is the name of the imprint, at BillionBrads.com, and we also have a Facebook page under the name of the book, I Know Why the Caged Brad Sings.
Oh, cool. All right, awesome. Well, man, really good to see you again. It's been a while. we were both clean shaven. I think the last time we might have had mustaches, but the beards are new.
Yeah. I have remained the same.
Yes, you have. You look exactly the same.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly as I did.
We live in the South, and when you look like a bear trapper, you don't really have to bring up who you voted for. And it's not the guy they think.
There you go. Well, we really appreciate you coming out here, and good luck with the book and your future endeavors, and stay in touch.
I really appreciate you guys having me. And,
Absolutely.
Keep doing what you're doing, because a lot of people really love you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brad.
No one needs a piece of jewelry any more than we need music or a fancy car